Hi, welcome to the second part of this tutorial. Now, if you remember where we left off, we have our text rising through a pool of water and morphing into the word simply. Now, what we'd like to do to make this a little bit more believable is have water drip from the object as it's rising. So, to do this, we need to add another realflow emitter. This time, we're going to add an object emitter. So if we go up to the emitters and add object, under the object emitter tab, we need to select which object it's going to emit water from. Now in our case, that will be the simply text. So if I'll simulate this for you quickly, show you what happens. See, as soon as we simulate, it starts emitting water from the entire simply object. And this is not what we're looking for. So first thing, we need to unhide the simply object, so visible yes, and we need to select a few points where this will drip water. I'll make it active again so it's easier for us to see it. Okay, now we want water to drip off, but we don't want a whole torrent of water coming off this thing. So what I'll do is I will select the object, which I will now rename to simply drips, and I'll go down here, select vertex, and this will allow us to select the vertex of where we want the drips to come from. So I want the drips to come from the bottom of the letters, and I want them in fairly tight clumps, so I'm just going to click drag a few clumps holding shift, and I'm going to do this for each letter. So click drag a few clumps here, not too many, because we don't want, as I say, again, a torrent of water coming off this, so just a few drips. And maybe one from the top here. And I'm going to hit select vertex again. It's not necessary to hit that, it's just at some point later on, if you accidentally select the object and you still have select vertex enabled, it will then select one vertex and get rid of your previous selection, and this can get extremely annoying, especially if you spent a long time setting up exactly where you want your drips to come from. So, simulate again, just so you can get a look at this, and now we have a few drips coming off. The problem is they're static because there's no gravity in this scene. So we want these drips to fall on a floor plane and splash. We can't do that at the moment, however, because if I drop gravity into this scene, there we go, it's gone in here, so it will affect everything in the scene, and I'll show you what I mean. So as soon as we simulate, our water starts moving downwards because it's now under the influence of gravity, and this is not what we want, because we want it to be only under the influence of one morph, or in realflow's case, one magic demon. So to combat this, we're going to have to use the exclusive links, and the exclusive links are a way in realflow of having objects only interact with other objects, not with everything. So the first thing we'll do is delete the gravity from the global links. You'll see it stays here, and we will actually rename this gravity to drip gravity. Oh, whoops. So drip gravity, and we have our simply drips emitter, which is the object emitter. If you select it, you can see the vertex that it should be emitting from, and we'll put this in the exclusive links. We'll take it out of the global links, and we will put the drip gravity also into the exclusive links. Now I'm just left click dragging on top of the drips, and you'll see this selection expander. So there's your object, and it's connected to the gravity. So now if I go ahead and simulate, you'll see our gravity no longer affects this square emitter or our pool of water, it only affects the drips. So you can see the drips coming off, falling downwards, because they're now affected by gravity. But this water here is not. It stays where it is until it starts to become affected by our simply morph. Okay. Now another problem is we don't want this to emit water straight away, because we want it to emit water after it's kind of half morphed and the water is in one lump around the object, or in this case around our simply text. So in order to do that, again, we'll just use a simple keyframe. We'll select the drips emitter, which we have to do here. We will make it inactive. We will add a key to that, and then by frame, let's say frame 40, I want it to start dripping water. So I'll scrub through the timeline until I get to frame 40. Set this to active. Add key. I'll double click this to bring up the curve editor. Select this key and make it a stepped key. So it's inactive, it's set at 0 until frame 40 when it becomes active. So we will do a quick test. And you can see, there you go, starts dripping water. A little too much water, however. Again, I'm going to slow this down. So if you select the simply drips emitter, the object emitter, you will see here that we have a speed. Instead of 2, I'm going to try 0.2. So resimulate, and there we go. Now we just have a few drips. Now you'll notice that we didn't get any water here for the morph. That's because I never reset, so it didn't reset this static plane. Now I have. I'll hit simulate. It'll slow down, of course, because we still have this active. Remember that, I almost forgot. So simulation inactive, visible, no, because we don't need to see it. Reset, simulate. Okay, we can see here we have our particle morph start, and there we have our drips. Now I don't know whether you saw that, but it actually started a little too early. It started to drip water up here, so I'm just going to move this keyframe to frame 50, which we can do quite simply by selecting the drips object, going back up to the simulation, double clicking to get to the curve editor, just expand this a bit. Moving around the curve editor, I'm just using Alt and the middle mouse button to move. Select this keyframe and just drag it to frame 50, or approximately frame 50. Set this here to 1 and 50, and there we go. Oh, sorry, not 50.5, 50. And there we go. So now it will start on frame 50 instead of frame 40 without us scrubbing through the timeline and rekeying. Okay, so reset again and simulate. And there we go. You should see water start to drip here. And you can. But at the moment it's going to pass straight through because we have no ground plane for it to hit. And before we put a ground plane in and I show you how to make the water splash on the floor, there is one thing I'd like to take you over very quickly, and that's that if we simulate, these particles will live forever. And as this will probably end up to be around a 350 frame animation, after these particles have hit the floor, this will be fine. They will just pool on the floor, and we want that. But in realflow there is always the chance that particles will hit the floor and wander off at some random angle. There's the chance that a particle will escape from the morph, and the more particles you have, the longer it takes. So we're going to want to kill off any particles which might escape the morph or might roll off the floor plane. And in order to do this, we need yet another daemon. It's called a K volume. And this daemon, anything with K in front of the daemon name in realflow is a kill daemon, and it kills particles. This one kills by volume. So if we press R to scale this volume, and we just create a box shape here, press 1 on the keyboard for a top view, align this, there we go, make sure it covers our whole pool of water. We're actually going to want it a little bigger, because when the water splashes on the floor we want to give it some room to move. 4 to get a perspective view again, scale it down this way and move it up. And now no particles will be able to live outside of this volume, which is quite handy. As I say, if we had a random particle break away, realflow won't have to spend needless time calculating what it's doing, it'll just die. And it's good practice in realflow to always set up some sort of containment, especially when you're testing. So now we have our object coming out of the liquid, and starting to drip water. What we need to do is have a floor plane for it to drip onto. So we'll stop that, reset, add an object. You don't need to make this in a separate 3D program. realflow does have some basic primitives, so I'll just add a ground plane. Hit 1 on the keyboard, press R to resize. Again, no universal scale, that doesn't matter. W to move, and a bit more scaled. Okay, that's fine. 4 on the keyboard. And now you should see that the water from the drips will still drop straight through the floor. This is because, I'll just show you, and I will actually, before this happens, hit 0 on the keyboard, which will put us into a shaded view. Select the drips so you can see them better, and you'll see them pass straight through the floor. This is because what we need to do is add the floor plane to this emitter so it interacts with it. So when we do this and reset, simulate, you will see here, I'll select the drips so you can see them better, so they're highlighted in blue. They will hit the floor and bounce. No, splash, sorry, not bounce. There we go. So we have our morph going on, and now we have dripping particles as well. I'm just going to press 8 on the keyboard to go back to a wireframe view. So there we go, and this will continue to drip throughout the whole animation, which is fine. I mean, if we're having this object, the effect we're actually looking for is for it to drip on the floor. So, and I don't know if you'll notice what's happened there, but the top of our morph actually hit the top of our volume, which will show you practically what happens, and it starts to kill the particles. So what we need to do is just make this volume a little larger. Okay, there we go. So now we simulate, we'll have the same morph that we had before, just this time it will also start to drip particles on the floor. Okay, in the third and final part, what we'll do is we'll morph this simply object into the Maya object. We'll create another particle emitter for another drip daemon, so it will drip water from the Maya as well, and then finally we'll smash the whole lot into the floor. I will see you in the next part.